Hello, I am Denise Olson, Interim Chief Financial Officer. To begin, I would like to thank the Mayor, City Council members, and the public for taking the time to review this presentation on the fiscal year 2022-23 mid-year budget review. City staff and the City Manager are recommending that the City Council receive an update for the fiscal year 2022-23 revenue and expenditure projections for the city's major funds. We are also asking for approval of a budget appropriation request in the amount of $430,000 to the general fund specific to the fire department and $533,218 to golf course fund, totaling an appropriation request of $963,218. Last, we were asking for approval of amendments to the position control resolution. There are details of these recommendations in the attached staff report. This table provides a summary of the general fund. The top portion of the table represents the revenues or inflows of resources, and the bottom half represents the expenditures or outflow of resources. The first column, titled Fiscal Year 22-23 Revised Budget, includes the adopted budget and any budget adjustments that have occurred between July and November of 2022. These budget adjustments would have been brought to the Council for incorporation into our budget. The second column, titled Fiscal Year 22-23 Year-End Estimate, includes budget adjustments through November of 2022 and includes department's best estimates for revenues and expenditures through the end of the fiscal year. The last two columns represent the difference, both in dollars and in percentage, between the revised budget and the year-end estimates. The general fund revenues are now estimated at $213.4 million as compared to $208.4 million, representing an increase in revenues of $5.1 million. This increase is due to $6.4 million increase in sales tax revenues, offset by $1.1 million decrease in property and deed transfer tax revenues due to lower projected volumes of real estate transactions. The general fund tax revenues projections, including the 1% Bradley Burns sales tax and the 1.5% Measure E sales tax and use tax, increased $6.4 million based on strong sales tax quarters in the second half of 2022 as compared to the initial estimates. Moving to the bottom half of the table, the fiscal year 2022-23 expenditures are now projected to be $221.8 million, of which $5.5 million is below the revised budget. The decrease in expenditure is primarily due to personnel savings from vacancies. The citywide vacancy rate is currently at 13.8%. The city's mid-year projections for the general fund revenues of $213.4 million and the expenditures, including transfers out, of $221.8 million would result in a fiscal year 22-23 net operating deficit of $8.3 million. The planned and budgeted deficit spending is primarily a result of the third and fourth payments being made to the city's utilities enterprise funds infrastructure use fees. The projected ending fund balance for the general fund for fiscal year ending 2023 is $59.1 million. The next table provides a summary of the Measure O fund. Measure O is a half-cent sales tax for the purpose of enhancing services to the community. The first column, titled Fiscal Year 22-23 Revised Budget, includes the adopted budget and any budget adjustments that have occurred between July and November of 2022. As stated earlier, the budget adjustments were brought to Council and incorporated into the budget. The second column, titled Fiscal Year 22-23 Year-End Estimate, includes the additional budget adjustments through November of 2022 and includes department's best estimates for revenues and expenditures through the end of the fiscal year. The Measure O fund revenues are now estimated at $21.9 million as compared to the $20.1 million, representing an increase of $1.8 million. This increase is a result of higher projected use tax revenues due to a stronger than forecasted economy. In terms of expenditures, they are now projected to be $18.7 million, of which $4.6 million is below the revised budget. This decrease is primarily due to one-time projects that will be carried over to the next fiscal year. The city's mid-year projections for Measure O revenues of $21.9 million and expenditures including transfers out of $18.7 million and accounting for the $4.6 million in carryover would result in an ending fund balance of $14.4 million for fiscal year ending 2023. Next, I will talk about the major enterprise funds, beginning with the Water Fund. The Water Fund revenues are now estimated at $64.9 million as compared to the $69.5 million, representing a decrease of $4.6 million. This decrease is due to $3 million decline in water usage from ongoing conservation measures and a $1.35 million decline on loan proceeds from project delays. The fiscal year 22-23 water expenditures are now projected to be $72.5 million, of which $49.1 million below the revised budget. The decrease of $49.1 million is due to one-time projects totaling $41.7 million that will be carried over to fiscal year 23-24. There is also $4.9 million in operational savings, which includes $1.3 million from vacancy savings and $3.6 million savings from supplies, professional services, and water purchases. The city's mid-year projections for the Water Fund's revenues of $64.9 million and expenditures including transfers out of $72.5 million and accounting for the $41.7 million in carryover would result in a decrease in ending fund balance from $67.6 million to $18.2 million for fiscal year ending 2023. The next slide is for the Wastewater Enterprise Fund. The Wastewater Fund revenues are now estimated at $53.8 million as compared to $67.2 million, representing a decrease of $13.4 million. This decrease is mostly due to delay in receiving proceeds for capital projects budgeted for the current fiscal year, which will now occur in the future. Expenditures for the wastewater system are projected to be $51.9 million, of which is a decrease of $89.5 million below the revised budget at $141.4 million. The decrease is again primarily due to one-time projects that will be carried over to fiscal year 23-24. Generally speaking, these variances are typical with water and wastewater systems with significant capital projects. The city's mid-year projections for the wastewater fund revenues of $53.8 million and expenditures including transfers out at $51.9 million and accounting for the $25.1 million in capital carryover would result in a decreasing ending fund balance from $77 million to $53.8 million for fiscal year ending 2023. The last major enterprise fund is for environmental resources. The revenues are estimated to be $48.6 million as compared to the $49.8 million, representing a slight decrease of $1.3 million. This decrease is mostly due to unrealized projected growth for these services. Expenditures are projected to be $59.6 million, which is a decrease of $10.4 million from the revised budget. This decrease is due to one-time projects that will be carried over for fiscal year 23-24. This decrease has been offset with minor increases in overall resulting from vacancies. The city's mid-year projections for the Environmental Resources Fund revenues of $48.6 million and expenditures of $59.6 million results in a net annual activity of $11.1 million. When including the $11.9 million in capital carryover, which would result in an ending fund balance decreasing from $29.9 million to $6.9 million for fiscal year ending 2023. As I have concluded presenting the review of the major funds, I will now provide some details regarding the budget appropriation request. First is a request for $430,000 for the general fund. This appropriation is for the fire department and includes $100,000 for supplies, $88,000 for services related to training, $80,000 for station maintenance, and $162,000 for lease payments towards the purchase of EMS equipment. We are also seeking a budget appropriation for the golf course fund. This includes $402,140 for cost of sales that were left out of the proposed budget. In addition, there are unforeseen expenses totaling $102,000 for minor capital replacement and repairs, an increase to equipment lease for air quality compliance for $93,482, and an increase in insurance for $76,956. The increases in expenditures were partially offset by reductions in related water use, resulting in an overall need for an additional $533,218 in additional appropriations. Overall, the golf operations is forecasting to have $5.9 million in revenues and $4.9 million in expenditures, which will result in a profit for fiscal year ending 2023 of $1 million. The detailed golf course operations budget is attached with the agenda. The final recommendation is approving amendments to the position control resolution, which is detailed in the report. The net result of this recommendation is to add one full-time position to the housing department. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation, and I will be available at the City Council meeting to answer any of your questions.